Yeah, I didn't want to start this. Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right, good morning. It feels like fall today. I don't know why. Like this morning it was so cold. No, it officially feels like fall for some reason. I don't know. Mid-September, I've decided that today's fall. I'm not sure why. I wrote that up on the board. Hopefully it's not a surprise to everyone. We talked about it last time, but I want to remind you that Wednesday, so we have today, we'll finish up with male anatomy. Today, we'll talk a lot about the production of sperm today, or that'll take us some time to cover. And then once we finish chapter 6, your first exam is on Wednesday. So Wednesday, remember a couple of things here. We won't have in-person class, right? So we won't meet in person for this class because the exam will be on campus. So you could take it from 8:30 to 9:45. We have an hour and 15 minutes. Or it opens at 12:01 in the morning. You can take it at any time on Wednesday. It has to be done before 11:59 p.m. Okay, so you can take it at any point if you'd rather like sleep in and take it later in the day. It's totally fine. But we won't meet in person. The exam will open up, make sure it's done by 11:59 p.m. You can use your notes, you can use your book. Make sure you prepare with that study guide like we talked about last time. That's definitely going to be really helpful for you. There's a couple of diagrams that are on the study guide as well. So make sure that you're able to label all of those parts of anatomy or match them to something on the test. There's no, it'll be like that part will be matching. So you won't have to worry about spelling or anything like that. But make sure that you are studying and reviewing or you're going to be very tight on time if you're trying to look everything up. Okay, and remember, like we said, it's mainly multiple choice, true, false, and matching. But there are a couple of short answer questions at the end, and you'll get a grade right away, except for the short answer questions, which I'll have to grade manually as they come in. Okay. Are there any questions about the exam? Feeling okay about it? Hopefully, because you can use your notes in your book. Hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better. I know exams cause a lot of anxiety, so hopefully you all do really well. Because you can use your notes in your book, you should all be in a wonderful spot with that. So hopefully that means everybody does great. I want to give you a heads up too. I hesitate to say it, but I'm like an overly honest person, so I'll just share it with you anyway. So on Monday, I plan to have a sickness that only Disneyland can cure on Monday. So I'm going to put that out there. I will send out an announcement, but I'm going to be canceling class on Monday. Yeah, I'm going to Disneyland to have churros. That's all I care about at Disneyland are the churros. And my other class has an exam that day anyway, so it worked out well. But I'm going to be I am canceling class on Monday. So I'm going to give you that heads up since I won't see you on Wednesday. So when I see you next, we'll start our next chapter, which is chapter 11. But yeah, I'll think of you as I eat like way too many churros on Monday. I haven't been to Disneyland nearly enough in my life. We used to go like every other month before COVID. And now, like, I don't know, it's just not the same anymore. I don't like the way that they have organized it since COVID ended. Like everything feels like you wait in line longer and the things are just like everything's disorganized. But the churros are still there, so I'll keep going as long as there's food. So Monday I won't be here, just so you can kind of plan on that. And again, I'll send out an announcement, but I figured I would just let you know now. Okay. Right. Anything else about the exam? Anything else at all for now? Before we jump back in to talk about the testes, right? All right. Okay. So we talked about external male anatomy a lot last time. What we'll look at today is the process of sperm production, which is a very like involved process. It's kind of the similar process for men to like the menstrual cycle for women. We have these two processes that are constantly going on for men and women and within our bodies. And so within the testes, right, are the testicles, which are within the scrotum, we have sperm production taking place. Sperm production, the technical name for it, spermatogenesis. The production of sperm, right? And this is a long process. It takes 64 to 72 days for sperm to be produced and mature. So even though men are producing a massive amount of sperm, it takes a long time for sperm to be produced, to mature, and be ready to be released from the body. So again, quite a process that happens. So the place where sperm are produced is within a part of the body called the seminiferous tubules. Now, these are like 700 feet of tubing that are wound up very, very, very tightly. But if you were to undo it, it'd be about 700 feet long. And this is where the sperm are actually produced. So within the seminiferous tubules, we get 300 million sperm per day. 300 million. So women mature one egg on average a month, men 300 million sperm a day, right? Very quantity versus quality kind of difference. So 300 million sperm a day being produced within these tiny little tubules, which again is a lot of feet of coils that if you were to kind of undo it. And then once the sperm are produced, they go to a spot called the epididymis. The epididymis is this little structure along the back of each testicle, right? Where sperm will hang out until they're mature, right? So once they're developed, they're actually immature. They lack the ability to swim. They lack mobility. So they go to the epididymis for a period of time in order to mature and finish their production. So they end up spending another about 14 days or so, about 2 weeks in the epididymis until they're mature and ready to be released. So we have them produced, then they're stored. And then when there's any kind of like sufficient like stimulation through an erection and ejaculation is going to occur, the sperm then start this whole process of kind of moving toward leaving the body. And in this process, they go through quite a few different glands along the way in order to pick up a bunch of different fluids, which help them swim and help them to survive the long journey that they potentially have in front of them. One of the spots that they go through is called the vas deferens. And the vas deferens is just a sperm carrying tube. It's about 18 inches or so long. And what happens is it goes, the epididymis drains into the vas deferens, and that's going to carry those sperm toward leaving the body. Along the way, as they're trying to leave the body in some way, they go through a bunch of different glands and vesicles, as I mentioned. The seminal vesicles give them a bunch of fluid. Now, sperm by themselves don't live in any kind of fluid, but they do pick up a lot of fluid along the way, which is what's going to give them the appearance of like semen or seminal fluid. And the seminal vesicles are these little glands that secrete this alkaline fluid that gives them all of this energy and kind of the ability to swim and make that journey. So the seminal vesicles give them about like 70% of their seminal fluid. It helps the sperm like in preparation for any kind of like journey out of the body through ejaculation. They also go through the prostate gland and the Cowper's glands. So again, all of these different glands, which give them that kind of milky white fluid appearance that they tend to have when they leave the body. The prostate gland gives us the other like 30%. And that fluid that they're in, again, gives them energy to swim, right? And it also helps to neutralize the acidity of the vaginal tract. So when they enter into a woman's body, the vagina or the vaginal tract is a very hostile environment for sperm, right? Like 300 million sperm would enter during an ejaculation, and only about 200 sperm actually make it to an egg, and one will fertilize an egg. So it's like 300 million to 1 odds, right, for sperm. A lot of them die in the vaginal tract because of the pH level of the vaginal tract. And so this milky white fluid that comes from the prostate gland helps to neutralize some of that acidity to help them survive, right? Again, kind of a perilous journey for the sperm. The odds are not in their favor. 300 million of them enter, 1 will fertilize the egg. The Cowper's gland also gives us a little bit of help, right? It produces like that pre-ejaculate, right, to help flush out the urethra where the urine would leave the body, right, for the sperm to come through, right? And we talked about this a tiny bit with that little intelligence test I gave you. Pre-ejaculate can actually contain some sperm or some seminal fluid, which is why people can sometimes get pregnant before a man has even ejaculated, right? So you have to be a little bit careful, right? That pre-ejaculate can contain some sperm, not a lot, but enough, right, at times. And so this can be something to kind of consider as well. So seminal fluid, some facts for you about seminal fluid. And I feel like I always learn something random about seminal fluid every semester. The typical male ejaculate is about a teaspoon in size, right? And we'll talk about this a little more when we get to the unit on pregnancy and some of the myths around things like turkey basters as you're trying to get pregnant, but only about a teaspoon in size. Right? And male ejaculate contains about 200 to 500 million sperm on average. So a ton of sperm, but again, remember, of all of those sperm, only about 200 or so will actually make it to an egg. There are trace amounts of proteins, carbs, sugars, and acids in seminal fluid. And what a man puts into his body, what they consume, will directly affect their seminal fluid. Not only the mobility and viability of those sperm, but also the taste. Right, so if you're performing like oral sex, for example, right, if a man eats a lot of like bitter, very sweet. So what a man puts into his body takes about 12 to 24 hours, and it can affect the like taste and density and also like viscosity of their seminal fluid as well. Somebody asked me last semester how many calories were in the typical male ejaculate. 5 to 7, if you were curious. Very carb friendly. Somebody asked me if you could be allergic to seminal fluid, and the answer is yes, actually. Very rarely, somebody can actually be allergic to somebody's seminal fluid, and it can cause them to have an allergic reaction. It could be that maybe that person ate something that affects their seminal fluid in some way, or it could be just a kind of an interesting like adverse reaction, but that can definitely happen. Somebody asked me 2 years ago, and I wrote this one down because it was such a bad, like it must have been used as a pickup line. They asked me if seminal fluid has teeth whitening properties. It's like, I think somebody tried to use that on you as a line. No, it does not have teeth whitening properties. But you can, in theory, be allergic to it. And again, about 5 to 7 calories, a lot of like trace amounts of proteins and carbs and sugars from all of those fluids that enter into the seminal fluid as it's about to leave the body. I have a little video that kind of walks through this process really quickly, just to as a like an overview. So let me play that for you, and then we can go from there. Sorry, there we go. Being able to release sperm from their body. Like if a man decides he doesn't want to get somebody pregnant, right? He can have a vasectomy. Women can have a hysterectomy and have their tubes tied off. But if a man gets a vasectomy, the vas deferens is tied off, so sperm can no longer enter into the seminal fluid. So they still produce sperm, they still produce a lot of sperm, but it's broken down and absorbed into the body. And that seminal fluid that leaves their body during an ejaculation, they still will have that, but it doesn't have any sperm in it. So they're releasing seminal fluid without the sperm. Right. And so that would be what would happen in like a permanent procedure where people have what's called a vasectomy. Oops, there we go. So during the process of erection, right, if a man becomes aroused, right, and through whatever process, right, if a man's becoming aroused, the penis would engorge with blood, right, all of those cavernous and spongy bodies within it engorge with blood, causing it to become erect, right, increasing in size and like obviously becoming hard or firm. This is something that's coordinated by the autonomic nervous system. In a way, it's kind of a spinal or like a basic like reflex in a sense. And oftentimes when men are entering puberty, this can happen against their will or without like conscious choice at times. And it can be something that they have to kind of learn how to control. But all of those arteries and spongy bodies fill with blood, causing it to expand and become erect. With enough stimulation, right, then a man will ejaculate. And we didn't talk about this much with women. We might mention it more later in the semester. but women can actually ejaculate as well, kind of like a clear fluid from the Bartholin glands. But men, when they ejaculate, that semen and seminal fluid is expelled from their body, like you just saw in the video. So what you'll see is that everything kind of builds up in this phase that we call emission. Like everything builds up in the glands, as you just saw in that little video. And then with enough stimulation, it's then expelled or like pushed out of the body and through what would be called ejaculation. So this whole process from beginning to end, again, takes like on average, like 72 days. If those sperm aren't used or expelled from the body in some way, they're just broken down and reabsorbed and become new sperm later on. So it's just this constant process that's happening for men, right? And if they become aroused enough to like have that release from their body, these are the two phases that would occur. So I have a little review of this because it's definitely something I will ask you about as we spend some time on it. I want you to get into like groups of like 2, 3, 4 people, whatever's easy around you, like 2 to 4 people. And then I will tell you what we're doing from there. We're going to do a little competition on the life of a sperm cell here. So find a couple of people and then we'll go from there. Like 2, 3, 4 people. Aren't those like the cutest sperm you've ever seen? They're so cute, right? They look so happy. Happy sperm. All right. Everybody have a group? Group of like 2, 3, 4 people? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a sheet that talks about the life of a sperm cell, and it has a bunch of letters, A through H, and you're going to put these in the right order. They are out of order. And so what I want you to do in the space down here is you're going to just rewrite the order. You can just write the letters. And as soon as you think you have it, let me know. The first few groups, I brought some candy. I haven't brought candy in like a couple of weeks. It was time. So when you're ready, send someone up here and you're just going to write the letters down here. When you think you have it right, raise your hand and I'll come around and check it. But come grab one per group and go ahead and get started again. They're out of order, so you're going to have to put them in the right order.
Yeah, I think these probably personal that's even that I produce. So yeah.
And then some of the.
Well, it comes after cheap, we know that. Probably I'm sure that, but it was, I've got that's the second one.
You're right.
Yeah. Probably see the. Yeah.
Oh, wait, no, where's the simulated one?
Oh, no.
You got it?
Yeah, you're the first two. Oh, you're scared.
I guess.
I am?
What is?
Oh, wait, no.
Yeah, we have our first person. Look at it. Number one. You have it.
Yeah.
actually fertilized, literally it's like a triangle.
But now it's just be in.
Okay.
You're the first, yeah.
That's where we got. The first two are right. The third one. And it's like on.
Yeah, let's start.
Yeah.
Okay, mid-team.
Yeah. Wait, there's no next to the last page.
I take a photo of you.
Yeah, there we go. So I'll let everybody finish that. I'll let everyone finish. And then we'll go. Okay, you got the first two correct. I only looked at the first one. The third one. Okay. Yeah, there we go. All right, I'll give you just a few more seconds to finish and then we'll talk about it.
Part of the study that.
Label the mail on. I'm gonna label the mail
All right, so most of you got it. A couple of you got tripped up a little bit. So here's the right order. It's C, B, F, E, G, H, A, D. Most of you had C and B correct and then got off a little bit after that. So if we read this whole thing just as a review, right? I am produced in the seminiferous tubules of the testicles. I mature in the epididymis. Almost every single one of you got that set, right? When there's adequate stimulation and the penis becomes erect, I leave the epididymis and travel up into the body through the vas deferens toward the bladder and ejaculatory ducts. As I pass through the seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and the Cowper's glands, fluids are added so that I can live longer and swim more easily. I'm now officially the substance we call semen. The urethra carries me, along with about 200 to 500 million other sperm, out of the penis in a process called ejaculation. I go through the cervix and the uterus and into the fallopian tubes in search of an egg cell. If I can find the ovum before the other sperm do, I will be the winner, part of a fertilized egg. So just a review, right, to kind of help you. And a lot of you got that, a couple of you got that really quickly. So I have some candy for those first three groups if you want to come up at the end and grab that from me. And you can hold on to that. I'm not going to collect it, just a little kind of fun review of the life of a sperm cell. Before we move on from these happy little guys right here, right? Any questions? Anything else about spermatogenesis, the production of sperm? Anything else here before we keep going? Yeah,
It's kind of a big question.
sure.
Sometimes, this is kind of a little bit graphic, sometimes after the orgasm, the first pee a man has kind of hurts. Is
Mhm.
it because the semen is more alkaline, is more acidic?
It can be, right? And so remember, like everything is kind of flushed out to make room for that sperm or seminal fluid to come out. And so sometimes that can just cause a little bit of discomfort the next time that someone like either urinates or maybe even has another ejaculation, either one, right? So it could be just you know, just the changes that are occurring in your body and all those alkaline fluids passing through there. Right. That wasn't too graphic, right? You set this down, I was ready, right? That was all right. All right, a couple of other things about male anatomy. So we talked about for women, like breast size and breast appearance being a really big like societal pressure and a lot of like expectations and norms around that. For men, there are a lot of expectations and norms and pressures around penis size and appearance, right? So men often can come to view like the size of their penis as a really important attribute in defining their worth as a lover or even defining their masculinity, right? A lot of like societal stereotypes. And remember, we talked about this before, right? Like the average male size, the size of the average penis is about 6 inches when erect, right? A little bit less than 6 inches. Only about 15% of men have a penis that is greater than 7 inches in length, right? And so for all of the expectations and stereotypes, the norm is somewhere around like 5.5 to 6 inches when erect, right? And remember, the vaginal canal is only 4 inches in length. It can obviously expand to accommodate more than that, but the average is somewhere around like 5.5 to 6 inches. And using things like pornography for norms of what's typical, completely off base, right? Most people in like pornographic films are much, much larger than the average or the norm. But there are a lot of expectations around this. And I was watching a comedy routine. I love stand-up comedy quite a bit. And there's an old little bit around penis size that I'm going to play for you. It was from a Jeff Foxworthy routine, but I'll play it for you. It's brief, but it kind of joking about penis size a little bit here. And there are a lot of those like stereotypes, right? Of someone has big feet or they have big fingers or whatever it is. And some of those are kind of correlation related, but they don't always hold up. There's just a lot of expectations and jokes and pressures and things around penis size and appearance, just like with women with breast size and appearance. Another thing up here, circumcision, right? Another kind of concern or something related to male sexual functioning. The vast majority of young men are circumcised in our country. Like 55 to 65% of newborn baby boys are circumcised in the United States, right? And this is the surgical removal of the foreskin, which covers the penis. And so, sorry for the image here, not to be traumatizing, right? But so here we have the foreskin covering the head of the penis. They cut it back, remove it, and then sew it, right? And so this is something that is done usually within the first 48 hours of a newborn being born. And it's something that you usually decide ahead of time. Now, I have all girls, but when my first was born, they paused for what felt like 5:20, it felt like 25 seconds. It was probably like half a second. But the entire time we were pregnant with our first, we were never sure what her sex was. I think I shared with you before, she was super modest the whole way through pregnancy. And so when she was born, the doctor was like, congratulations, it's and like paused for what felt like an eternity. And all I could think is what I was sitting there in the operating room was like, oh my God, if it's a boy, we didn't talk about circumcision, right? Like in the like 3 seconds that it took him to say it was a girl, that was all I could think about. But it was a girl, it didn't matter in the end. But usually within the first 48 hours, they will take this little baby boy and they do a local anesthetic. So they numb the area on the penis and they will perform this procedure. And it is by far the norm in our culture, but there are still like 35 to 45% of people who don't do it for a variety of reasons. So there's a lot of like pros and cons. And as a reminder, remember, Egypt was the one to normalize or kind of invent this, but very different in Egypt, as we talked about. This was done as a teenage boy with a stone blade in front of the entire like society, versus this is done privately in a medical facility most of the time. So some pros and cons. There are a lot of like health benefits to being circumcised, which is probably the number one reason why people do this. It reduces infections and the likelihood of different like bacteria and viral infections occurring. What can happen when a man is circumcised? In this area around the head of the penis, bacteria can build up and it can cause infections to occur. It's actually a name for the bacteria that builds up right there. They call it smegma, which sounds just gross, right, by itself. But it is a very like commonly occurring thing for uncircumcised men to go through, where they get infections because it's harder to clean, right? When the head of the penis is exposed, it's much easier to clean than if it's covered by foreskin. So that's probably the biggest benefit or like proponent of being circumcised is reducing the likelihood of infections and bacteria. It's also something that tends to have some religious beliefs that go with it. Some cultures and religions believe in circumcising versus not circumcising. And there's a lot of like normality with it. Because it's the norm, a lot of people will do it just so that their like little boy is like fitting with the norm of what our culture does. So it is, again, like typical for this to happen, but there are a lot of cons as well. And one of them is that it might decrease sensitivity for men. The foreskin is a very like sensitive part of male anatomy. And so by removing it, right, you might reduce their sensitivity. It can also be unnecessarily traumatic, right? We talk a lot about choice. And obviously a 48-hour-old baby can't choose whether they want this done or not. And so the parents are choosing it for them. And there's a lot of discussion around like, should someone have the right to choose whether this happens for them or not? Now, it can be done later, right? So if a little boy was uncircumcised, they can get circumcised later in life, right? They can go in, it's a patient procedure. They do the same thing, reverse some of like the thin skin between like near the like anus, and they'll attach it to the end. So you can have this reverse, but it's a very like painful, oftentimes mixed result procedure to do. So the biggest cons are that it can be unnecessarily traumatic, that it robs somebody of choice, and it might reduce like their pleasure or their sensation, which you wouldn't necessarily know because it would have been normal for you your whole life to have it the other way. Any thoughts or questions here? Again, this is a choice a lot of parents have to make very, very quickly for the most part. But again, it can be done later in life as well. You're like, please take that picture away, right? Okay. It's gone. As far as like male like health concerns, we talked about female health concerns and the doctor that women would go to for reproductive health. For men, men go to what's called a urologist, or it could just be your primary medical doctor. But urologists are the ones who specialize in like male reproductive health and just kind of the urinary tract in both sexes, right? So you might go to a urologist even as a woman as well if you're having any kind of like urinary tract issues. But urology is typically the specialty area for men, though it might just be your like primary doctor. There are lots of conditions that can affect men as well, just like we talked about with women. One relatively like more common one is something called priapism, where erections can be kind of long lasting and painful for men, not related to sexual desire or excitement. So this is when a man gets an erection kind of against their like conscious desire to do so. They're not turned on or aroused. Remember, there's like a lot of like spinal reflex stuff going on by the autonomic nervous system when it comes to erections. So sometimes men can get erections without wanting to, and they can be painful and not go away. Penile and testicular cancer are two of the types of cancer that tend to affect men, along with prostate cancer when it comes to reproductive health. Prostate cancer is by far the most frequently diagnosed cancer among men, and the second most common cause of death after lung cancer for men, right? So very important, just like with female health, that men are getting regularly checked by their doctor, right? Starting in like the teenage years. And typically a doctor will like check your reproductive anatomy all the way through very quickly. But once you become sexually active, it's even more important, right? So for men, they often have prostate checks, right? And then kind of a general check of their anatomy by a primary doctor or like a urologist. You can also have what's called prostatitis, right? An enlarged or inflamed prostate. That can sometimes happen as the result of like an infection. So again, for both men and women, really important to be going to the doctor, especially once you become sexually active or you're kind of in your late teens. At that point, you should be doing these regular checks. Questions, thoughts, comments? I know you missed that music, right? I promised you it was coming, right? Like the other half of that video, right? You missed the music last time, but you get to hear it today. So I played for you that video for women talking about like breast size and breast appearance. Now I have the male equivalent, which is a group of men, a bunch of different men of different ages sitting around talking about penis size and penis expectations as well, right? Yeah, let's make this bigger. Turn this up. It's got the same music that was so cringy from before that you get to enjoy again now. So I'm only going to play